This kid who, he just had a mean streak in him. He lived up the street from me, and he was so mean as a bully, because he was like the neighborhood bully. He would beat up on his own brother all the time, and his brother was like maybe 2 or 3 years younger than he was. And he just could not get along with people. You know, I tried to, because on our street he was the only one that had a trampoline, and in the 70s that was really the hottest thing you could ever have, because you got to exercise with it, but you got to jump up and down with them. And they're coming back as far as popularity. This kid was so mean that it was almost like if you came to his house for anything, whether to jump the trampoline on there with him, or he just started something, you know. He'd harass you, he'd physically start trying to beat you up, you know, and you weren't doing anything to him. And his father and mother were pretty much on the same level mentally as he was. I mean, they didn't feel that what he was doing was wrong. And you know, my parents talked to him once or twice to say, you know, your son's, you know, harassing the other children on our street, but more importantly, they're not doing anything to antagonize him. It's just him mentally. He has a problem, and he obviously he didn't want to get help, or his parents didn't want to get help for him. So anyway, beyond him having this trampoline, we also had to encounter him at certain times. You know, when the other kids on the street were down playing somewhere and you'd go, he'd be there too. And one time I was down at the neighbor's house, and we got into an argument, and he actually picked up a rock and he threw it at my face, and he broke one of my front teeth out, and it's actually still there. As far as the dentist had to build up the tooth, not with a crown, but just with a filling, and that's all it was, really, was a filling, and it's been there for about 40 years. So I have a memento of my early childhood in my mouth even today. It's stained, and you can obviously, if I got close enough, you could see where the filling ends and my tooth begins. But my father and my mother went to his parents' house and told him that told them he had thrown this rock and hit me in the face with it, and it didn't faze them at all anyway. They kind of felt like, well, maybe he did something that made them mad at him. And really, it was just, it was an intimidating scenario where you were there and you were talking to him, but he was talking you down, and he was making threats of, you know, you're a wimp, I'm going to beat your head in, all this stuff. And for him, it just wasn't enough to verbally abuse you or physically hit you or whatever. He just picked up a rock out of the neighbor's lawn and he threw it at my mouth. And I guess I should have been smart enough to put my mouth or my hand up, you know, and deflect the rock, but I didn't. So the moral of this story is actually something good from it all. I mean, he really wasn't well liked by anybody on our street because of how he acted towards people. But what he ended up doing, his father offered to take me to a baseball game. And I had never been to a baseball game really in my life when he offered me, his little brother, and him the chance to go. And that is why, if you watch my videos today, you can see that I have posted many videos about the Fulton County Stadium, because I always regret that I never went back again after that one time that his father took me and his brother and him to see an Atlanta Braves game at Fulton County Stadium. The seating for where we were, most people would say, oh man, you got the worst location in the stadium. Well, for me it wasn't. We were up there at the very top of the stadium where they have or had an overhang awning of the stadium. So if it rained, at least there you didn't get hit by rain, because the awning helped block some of that from hitting the seats. And that's where we were. We were almost at the very top of the stadium. And I still remember they had those lights from the roof, and also they had single lights inside the awning to illuminate the seating and everything. And anyway, just to get back to this boy's bullying attitudes, he came across through his father in a lot of ways, because when I got there to the stadium, his father tells me, since I'm a guest of his, that I was not to speak, I was not to say anything except to sit there and enjoy the game, while in total 160-degree contrast, his own son and both of them were allowed to ask for anything they wanted. If they wanted a hot dog, they could get a hot dog. If they wanted anything that was being sold in the stadium, like, you know, hats, ball caps, souvenir items, whatever, they could just ask and they'd have it. And he was like, you know, if you didn't have any money, meaning me, my father gave me a little money, he was like, you know, you're just out of luck. You're gonna have to sit there and watch the game, and that's it. So in my mind, vaguely, I can still remember he might have offered a hot dog, maybe. I don't remember, but I do remember it was like, you're the guest, and he's going out of his way to say, you're not here to enjoy anything. You're just here because it's a privilege to be with my sons. And it was to think that my father worked all the time at United Airlines, and he never had the chance to go anywhere. You know, if he got off, he pretty much wanted to stay around the house, and he never once actually, we never went to a ball game. And, you know, seeing the stadium like that with a complete jerk like the father to say to me, I can't yell when they hit a baseball, I can't yell or say anything. It was like you had to be as well-mannered as humanly possible, while his kid could do anything they wanted, and you just had to sit there and listen to it, you know. And so anyway, we had a fun time, and I do remember it. So after, 40 years, I contacted this boy, because he had gotten married apparently, or he's divorced now, but he had his son, and they lived down in Griffin, which is near Macon, Georgia. I just called him up randomly and talked to him, and mentally speaking, his attitude was the same as it always had been. He's still a bully. He told me that, you know, he had a son, and I thought, oh Lord, this poor kid's going to go through the same thing that I did, you know, or his younger brother. He never did say whether his brother was alive or where he was living, but I know probably he has very little to do with him. But I called him to say that I wanted to tell his father I appreciate him having allowed us to go to the stadium. And he said his father had already died, so I never had a chance to tell him, you know, I appreciate what you did and allowing us to go. And since that time, I've had real no desire to talk to him again, because he's the same person he was when I knew him as a child, and I don't really feel like I've been through it enough. You know, I don't want to go through it again. I never did tell him about the fact that, you know, that injury I have in my mouth is still there. You know, I never did get a cap for it. I never got a crown. You know, but it's still doing good, you know. But that sort of thing is stuff that stays with you for your whole life. You have kids that weren't respectful for their parents, and they certainly aren't respectful to you. And that's what I always got from this kid's attitude about life, that he didn't care what you said or what he said. He didn't like you. That was it, you know. And your best bet is to stay as far away from this guy as possible, because he's not going to talk to you. Or at least all he's going to do is make your life a living, you know what. I mean, you're not going to please him no matter how hard you try, you know. And anyway, he and his family, if I'm not mistaken, they moved just before I had to move from College Park in 1979, so he had already moved with his family somewhere else. Although I could be wrong, maybe his family didn't move, but we did, and indirectly it was the greatest thing that ever happened, because this guy is an absolute idiot. You know, he didn't care about you. He wanted to abuse you, yes, but he didn't care to be considerate to you about what he was trying to accomplish. I mean, you know, he was a bully because he wanted to be one. It wasn't because he was having some sort of traumatic experience with his father, because his father worked as a repairman, I believe, for Frigidaire or for Maytag. So he was like a repairman for, you know, a major company that manufactured appliances. So it's not like his father abused him. I mean, he just had that underlying mentality of hatred towards anybody else who he didn't think met his standard as a person. And that's why for his son it certainly came through, because that's how he grew up. That's what he grew up being, a bully, unmannered, hateful person towards everybody he met. And to think you know, you had to live with somebody like that. I always felt sorry for his little brother, because every time I came over there, they were in a fight. He was beating him up, he was on the ground pouncing on him, or I mean, literally, he was punching him in the stomach all the time for something. And he never did seek psychiatric help. As far as I know, he never went to a doctor about it, or his parents never sent him. And I guess because they figured, well, whatever his problem is, you know, every kid has problems one way or the other, and we're not going to do anything to help, because we don't need to. And so that's the one thing I always remember about this guy. I'm not going to say his name. I don't want to make him think that I'm trying to single him out. But he's no different today than he was 40 years ago. And that's sad, you know. I think probably he tried to make a life for himself. He had a kid, but his wife's not there. She divorced him, probably because the same thing. She couldn't get along with him, and he didn't try to make it work. So for him, he was always down at the world. He's still down at the world today. You can get in his voice that he has some contentment with having a child that he can take care of, but that's it. You know, I think having her for me was probably the worst day of his life, because he didn't want to remember all those early days when he was always hurting other people. Because, you know, I tried to be nice to him on the phone, and I just got to the point I was like, well, it's nice talking to you. I hung up, you know, and I kind of felt a relief, thinking, well, at least I don't have to talk to him anymore. But it's still sad, you know, people like that, even in the 70s, having a chip on their shoulder, you know, and they can't ever be content. They can't be happy with who they are. So that's a piece of nostalgia for everybody watching about what life was like, at least in Georgia and Atlanta in 1974, 1975. Thanks.